I had to comply with child support payments. I understand I should fulfill my responsibilities and contribute to child support. Let me pose this question to you all. Would you continue paying child support if you discovered the child wasn't biologically yours? Hey, everyone, I'm a 32-year-old male and I'm married to my wife, Emily. We have a daughter named Lucy, and I thought we had a strong relationship. However, over the past 6 months, we've been constantly arguing. Now, Emily wants a divorce, and I'm devastated and angry because she's trying to take away everything I have. Besides the painful divorce, she's also insisting that I pay child support. I already cover all the expenses, so I don't see the reason for that. My lawyer explained that this is a common situation, though. Sometimes the ex-spouse becomes selfish, bitter, and greedy. She even wants the car I purchased and the house, despite inheriting a house from her late father over the summer. It's as if she wants everything, and she no longer sees me as a human being. Currently, she's staying at her dad's house, which is now hers, but she drops off Lucy for my scheduled time with her. She even attempted to limit my visitation to every other weekend instead of our original arrangement of every weekend. However, I couldn't allow that. I fought vigorously to maintain my time with our daughter. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door, and I prepare myself for an argument as I open it, knowing it's likely to be her. She gives me a hostile look, instructs me not to let Lucy stay up late, hands me Lucy's backpack, and leaves without saying goodbye. Lucy turns and shouts, "Goodbye, Mommy!" However, Emily simply continues walking to her car, not responding to this adorable baby's farewell. I had a feeling that she had unresolved issues that needed swift attention. I bring Lucy inside and put on some cartoons for her while I prepare a snack. Typically, I work on weekends, so having Lucy with me every weekend has caused me to miss work. It's been a year since the divorce settlement was finalized, and during this time, I've been making child support payments and skipping work every single weekend. Unfortunately, I recently lost my job. When I walked into work on Monday, my boss asked me to gather my belongings and leave. It was quite surprising and stung a bit. I had been with this company for 15 years and now it's all gone. So I've been trying to recover from this setback, and I'm getting worried because I have bills to pay. I don't want to risk losing my house or my car, and I must ensure I can make my child support payments. Otherwise, I'll face serious consequences. Consequently, I've been scouring newspapers and online job listings in my field of expertise. The issue is, there aren't many job openings right now, at least none that I can find. Taking a fast food job flipping burgers won't be sufficient to cover my expenses, especially the hefty child support payments. I haven't informed my wife about losing my job yet, and I'm dreading that conversation. I anticipate it's going to be challenging. Talking to her about potentially upsetting matters has always been difficult, and I've often resorted to dishonesty instead of being straightforward because she struggles to handle bad news. I despise lying, but I've avoided unnecessary arguments by doing so. However, I'll have to address this situation soon because she'll eventually realize I can't make the payments. Maybe I can keep quiet and try to secure a job before she confronts me. Though I doubt I'll be that fortunate, but you never know how things might unfold. Perhaps where there's a will, there's a way. Let's jump to the present now. It's been 4 months, and I still haven't found a job that would allow me to cover all my expenses. And I've fallen behind on a significant portion of my child support payments. I never informed my ex-wife, but she clearly noticed something was amiss because the money wasn't coming in. She called me shouting, "Where's my money?" I simply explained that I didn't have it and wouldn't have it anytime soon. Naturally, just like that, I suspected she made sure I suffered for not paying. I can imagine that the first thing she did after hanging up was promptly contact the authorities and report me for failing to pay child support. Before I knew it, it was 5 a.m., and the police were at my door. I answered, and they asked, "Andy, is that you?" I replied with uncertainty, waiting for them to inform me that I was being arrested for neglecting child support payments. And that's precisely what they did. So now I'm in handcuffs en route to the police station. It's the weekend, so I won't see the judge until the next Monday. They conducted a strip search, confiscating all my clothes, shoes, and wallet. Presently, I find myself in an orange jumpsuit, surrounded by other genuine criminals, which is something I can't believe. I don't belong here. All I needed was a bit more time to get back on track. But of course, my ex-wife didn't see it that way, and I expected as much because she's never been compassionate or concerned enough about others to avoid causing them suffering. If it were up to her, she'd take every penny I earn and then some. I'm furious, and it's hard to believe it has come to this. I'm in jail while my ex-wife is free, and my daughter probably isn't even paying attention to her. It should be her behind bars, not me. I suppose that's what I get for wanting to spend time with my daughter. This morning, I had my court hearing, and the judge sentenced me to 8 months in a local correctional facility. I've been receiving quite a few letters from my parents lately. Today, I got a letter from a mutual friend of Emily and mine named Brandon. I haven't heard from him since our last barbecue 2 years ago on St. Patrick's Day. I vaguely remember that he was acting strangely, like he had something to tell me but couldn't bring himself to do it. After that, he disappeared from the scene. I opened the letter and started reading it. It said word for word, "Dear Andy, I know it's been a while since we've talked, but when I heard about your situation with Emily, your divorce, and your incarceration for failing to pay child support, I knew I couldn't keep silent any longer. Man, I hate to break this to you, but Emily was cheating on you with the guy she's with now. They've been together since before Lucy was born, and I honestly think you should consider doing a paternity test because Lucy might not be yours. If that's the case, you might be able to rectify the situation. I'm really sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I didn't feel it was my place to interfere in your marriage. Anyway, I hope you can sort things out. I'll talk to you soon. Brandon." I instantly crumpled the letter in my hands in frustration. Damn it, I had a feeling something was off. All those times she came home with new jewelry or a new purse, and how she was consistently late returning from the store or the doctor's office. Not to mention she took her phone everywhere and it had a lock on it. Did my phone have a lock on it? No, it never did because I genuinely loved my wife. Now I realize she was likely using me for money and perhaps trying to trap me into paying child support for a child who might not even be mine. I've completed my sentence without any issues, except for the first day. I even made a few friends who were also incarcerated for failing to meet their child support obligations. I must admit that I'm feeling quite depressed, but I'm more determined than ever to turn things around. My plan is to keep a low profile and be a model prisoner, which is precisely what I've been doing: eating, sleeping, working out, and reading my Bible. My parents visited me whenever they could, but I hated having them see me in that place. They tried to keep their spirits up for my sake. Now that I'm back home, I'm trying to figure out a way to start anew. I need to find a job to avoid ending up back there. I've decided that I'll have to look for work outside of my previous career field, which is nerve-wracking because I've been doing the same thing for so long. I don't have any experience in anything else. I've been receiving numerous letters from my mom and dad, and they've visited me a couple of times as well. If it weren't for their help with the house payment, I would have lost my home by now. I almost lost my car too, but I managed to pawn some of my most cherished possessions to cover the costs. Emily has attempted to visit me at least 3 times since I returned home, but I have no desire to see her. She even tries to make me feel guilty by saying that Lucy wants to see me. However, I'm not her biological father, and I never should have been placed in that situation in the first place. I can't bring myself to face Lucy because I simply don't know what to say to her. She must be so confused, and I feel terrible for her. But I know I have to take Emily to court to secure what I rightfully deserve from all of this. She should never have deceived me into believing Lucy was mine. She had ample opportunities to tell me the truth, but instead, she lied to me every single day, and then she shattered my world by letting me fall in love with that little girl. Well, now I have nothing and no one. But being alone is better than being lied to every day. I started searching online for a better lawyer because I just knew I was going to need the best lawyer in town to get this taken care of ASAP. I didn't care how much it would cost me or if I could even pay for it. My new job is all right. I'm working for a marketing agency. It's not so bad, but it doesn't pay near as much as I'm used to. But hey, it pays to bills, and that's all that really matters right now. So I would find another job to pay for the lawyer if I had to. At this point, I work 3 jobs to make sure Emily gets what's coming to her. I searched for a lawyer all night and finally picking one that seemed like the right option. So I gave him a call and he said all the right things when I explained my situation, and he set up a court date and a paternity test for me to take. So they had that result instead of waiting till the court date appeared. I show up at the place where I'm supposed to take my test, and Emily's there with Lucy at the exact same time. Lucy sees me and takes off running in my direction. I was not sure what to think. I love this little girl absolutely to death. I helped raise her for her whole life pretty much. We have such a great bond, and I don't know what I'm going to do if she's not mine. Please, Lord, let her be mine, I prayed in my head. Then I picked Lucy up and gave her a hug and a kiss on the cheek, and I told her I missed her and I loved her, and that she needs to go back with Mommy now. She protested, but Emily walked and yanked Lucy out of my arms and just walked away. Lucy starts crying and yelling, "Daddy!" And I had to walk away in my heart, breaking into pieces as I did it. I took my test and they said that I would get the results within a couple of weeks. Oh boy, how great. First update. Now it's time to wait patiently. I haven't been able to sleep much in the past week and a half, and it shows on my face with those dark circles under my eyes that have become a permanent feature. I don't recognize myself anymore. I'm just eager to find out the truth so I can plan my next steps. Then, the mailman arrived, delivering today's mail to the mailbox. I walked out to the end of the driveway, collected the bills and other envelopes, and started heading back inside. That's when I saw it. The results. Right there in my hands, all I had to do was open it to discover if Lucy is biologically mine or not. I took a deep breath, half ran inside, not wanting the neighbors to see me break down if the results turned out negative. I closed the door behind me, rushed over to the couch, and sat down. With trembling hands, I tore open the envelope, accidentally tearing the paper inside. I had to piece it together to read the results. 0.0%, 0%. My heart sank, and I flung the paper and other mail across the room, letting out my emotions in tears. I'm devastated, and I'm not sure what to do next. It can't get any worse. This is my daughter, I thought to myself. But then I realized, well, this is not my daughter. How will this affect her? I'm certain Emily won't allow me to be a part of her life after this revelation. Why would she? I'm not her biological father. As for the man she's with, I wish I could confront him, even though I know it wouldn't solve anything. I immediately called my lawyer to share the news, and he assured me he would take note of it and address it in court. I also expressed my desire to sue Emily for the emotional distress this has caused me. Oh, the deception and all those child support payments I've made when I know I'm not the biological father. My lawyer agreed to prepare for the upcoming court date, and we ended our call. It would be another 3 weeks before I'd have my day in court, where I hoped to reveal the truth about Emily to everyone. The next morning, my lawyer called me. He had some news to share. The man Emily had been cheating on me with for 6 out of our 7 years of marriage was, in fact, Lucy's biological father. I thanked my lawyer for the update and ended the call. I attempted to call Emily, but it went straight to her voicemail. To be honest, I was seething with anger at this point, on the verge of losing control. I initially thought about giving her a piece of my mind, but then I remembered the impending court date. I didn't want to jeopardize my chances of winning, so I quickly hung up and sent her a text, pretending the call was a mistake, asking her to disregard it. I didn't want her to realize that I knew the truth about her affair partner being our daughter's biological father. I mean, their daughter now. She was supposed to be mine. How could someone tear apart the lives of 2 people they claim to love? It just didn't make any sense to me. I couldn't fathom ever cheating on her, let alone for 6 years, and fathering a child with another woman while pretending it was normal to let my wife raise the child as her own. I knew that's not how it should work, but if the roles were reversed, I'd be facing serious consequences. Now I was determined not to leave that courthouse without receiving the compensation I deserved. I intended to sue her for... Update number 2. The day of the trial arrived faster than I expected, and my nerves were on edge. I had to hold back my anxiety in the backseat of the taxi, as I doubted the driver would appreciate me getting sick in his car. Instead, I focused on the moment when Emily would discover that her little paternity secret had been uncovered. It was puzzling to think how she managed to receive child support from both him and me. I couldn't fathom how that was even possible, but somehow she had found a way. Upon reaching the courthouse, my lawyer met me outside our courtroom. He quickly briefed me on his planned statements and how I should conduct myself during the proceedings. He stressed the importance of remaining composed and assured me that he would handle everything. I affirmed my understanding and expressed my desire for Emily to be held accountable for her actions. Inside the courtroom, I took my seat, and the trial began. Emily claimed that she didn't know who the father was, emphasizing her unhappiness in our marriage. She insisted that she genuinely believed I was Lucy's father and didn't want to leave me, so she continued to stay with both of us. To my surprise, my lawyer argued that if she had obtained a paternity test from the beginning, it would have prevented me from making unjust child support payments and spared me from serving time in a correctional facility. He also informed the judge that her affair partner, Cole, was a wealthy businessman, and suddenly, everything clicked. It became clear that she had been using both of us for our money, and she even admitted to collecting child support payments from both Cole and me, squandering all the money, leaving her unable to repay me. The judge informed her that she had committed a felony by committing fraud, and she would be facing prison time. I was so surprised that I nearly fell out of my chair. It was hard to believe that she would actually go to prison. The taste of karma was indeed quite sweet. While I felt relieved, I couldn't help but feel sorry for Lucy. She would have to grow up without her mother. However, I couldn't help thinking that it might not be a bad thing as long as her biological father treated her well, hopefully better than Emily did. If he did, I felt optimistic about the situation. Still, not being a part of Lucy's life was incredibly difficult for me. Once I happened to see them at a corner store near my home. It felt like Emily had purposely gone there to run into me and torment me with the person I cared about most, but couldn't be with because she wasn't my child. Even though she lived on the opposite side of town, I couldn't think of any other reason for her to come so far just to buy some chocolate milk and a candy bar. Regardless, I was determined to move on, and with time, Lucy would adjust to her real father and love him as much as she loved me. Suddenly, my lawyer handed a piece of paper to the judge, who then cleared his throat and made the following statement. I have learned that you, miss, inherited a house from your late father. Emily appeared shocked and reluctantly nodded in agreement, her gaze shifting toward me. I quickly looked straight ahead, understanding the shock and horror she must have felt. Now she would experience the pain I had endured in the past few months. The pain of losing my daughter and wife, discovering her affair, losing my job, and going to jail has been overwhelming. Now it seems like it's her turn to face the consequences. The judge informed Emily that she'd have to serve a minimum of 3 years in prison and transfer the house title to me as payment for child support. It was unexpected, but another victory for me. I leaned back in my chair and breathed a sigh of relief, glancing at her. She's in for a harsh awakening. Prison, let alone jail, isn't suited for her. They'll eat her alive. Though guilt still lingered, I pushed it aside. I wouldn't feel sorry for her anymore. I just couldn't. Update number 3. Emily is getting released today due to good behavior, and I'm not sure whether I should be concerned or not. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash outside my house, or rather, Emily's old house. I rushed to the window and saw a car had rear-ended mine. Without hesitation, I ran outside to check if the person was okay. To my surprise, it was Emily, and she was clearly intoxicated. In the back seat was Lucy, her head slumping forward. I quickly removed Lucy from her car seat, gently placing her on the ground, and checked her pulse to ensure she was breathing, which she was. I pulled out my phone to call an ambulance. I didn't even bother to check on Emily, who was staggering away from the car and falling over on her own. All I could do was yell at her and express my frustration at her recklessness. She didn't even acknowledge my presence. The ambulance arrives and takes Lucy to the hospital. I made sure to sit with her in the back so she wouldn't be alone. While the ambulance speeds away, I glance through the rectangular window and see the police handcuffing Emily. Even though Lucy isn't biologically mine anymore, I still care for her as if she were. Emily's actions are incomprehensible to me. I can't fathom why she would do such a thing. Lucy is stable and starting to regain consciousness. Emily called me from jail and insisted on bringing Lucy to see me, emphasizing that I'm her real dad, regardless of a DNA test. I responded by informing her that I would do everything in my power to ensure she loses full custody of Lucy, and I don't care who takes care of her as long as it's not Emily. Emily broke down in tears, vowing not to let me win, but I told her she had already lost and hung up. I testified against Emily during her trial, looking the judge in the eyes and describing her actions as a mother and how she treated Lucy. Consequently, she received a sentence of a whopping 10 years in a maximum security prison. Although I believe she should have been imprisoned for a longer time initially, I accept that Lucy didn't come home with me. Instead, she went into the care of Child Protective Services. I'm just relieved that she's still alive, considering the collision where Emily's car struck mine at a speed of at least 54 miles per hour. Both of them could have lost their lives. Her actions don't entirely surprise me. I always expected her to show up at some point. I just wish things could have turned out differently. I could have made both of them happy. But Emily had to ruin it all.
All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in.
My name is John, and my wife's name is Grace. We're both 34 years old. I'm not overweight, but I could shed a few pounds, and I've always considered myself reasonably good-looking. Back in college, I had several girlfriends and never had trouble attracting women. However, everything changed when I met my future wife. We started dating exclusively during my freshman year, and 7 months later, she became my wife. Grace had many admirers in college and never lacked male attention. She has a natural charisma that lights up any room, and her playful personality is genuinely captivating. I thought we were the perfect couple because we enjoyed spending time together, but our busy schedules made it challenging. I work as a systems analyst at a large IT company, and she's a registered nurse in the orthopedic department of a major hospital. I typically work 9 hours a day, 6 days a week, and sometimes I have to stay late to address complex or time-sensitive issues. Due to our work hours, we only get to see each other on weekends. When Grace has the day shift, we meet in the evenings, but she's often exhausted and goes to bed by 10 p.m. shortly after returning home. We try to make up for our lack of intimacy during the weekends. We often talk about our fantasies, and we both agreed that fantasies should remain fantasies. She was everything I needed, and she assured me that I was the love of her life. I have no time for cheating, and she's aware of my strong stance against it. Grace works 4 days a week for 13 hours, from Monday to Thursday, with alternating shifts every 4 weeks. Her shifts usually last 7 to 8 hours, whether during the day or at night. Additionally, there's a shift change period, which takes about an hour. So, when she heads home, she typically arrives around 9:30 a.m. or p.m. This has been our routine for the past 2 years. I've suggested that she find a more stable job, but she loves what she does and is reluctant to change careers. So we had to endure her unconventional work hours. When we initially got married, we both had student loans and agreed it was best to pay them off before starting a family. Once we'd cleared our debts, we decided to hold off on having children until we were settled in a comfortable house in a nice neighborhood. 3 years ago, we reached that milestone and decided it was time for her to become pregnant. However, she didn't conceive. Today, being Monday, I left work early, thinking my wife had come down with the flu. I texted her that I was going home due to sickness, and she advised me to take some flu medicine. I asked her about the specific medication and where I could find it. She responded, Tamiflu, and mentioned it was in the medicine container in the second drawer under her dressing table in our bathroom. I simply replied, okay, and headed home. Upon arriving home, I went into our master bathroom to locate her medication, but stumbled upon something unexpected. I searched the drawers she had mentioned, but found nothing labeled as Tamiflu. Upon opening the top drawer, I discovered flu medicine along with a foil packet of birth control pills. She had already taken the one designated for today. I was utterly stunned. She had assured me that she had stopped taking birth control over 3 years ago. We had been trying to conceive for the past 3 years without success. My wife had always told me that our conflicting work schedules were the reason, and sooner or later, our schedules would align with her fertile period in the spring. I finally decided enough was enough, and we both underwent medical tests. Following numerous examinations, our doctor stated that there were no issues with either of us. I gazed at the foil packet of birth control pills and wondered if it was a leftover packet, but I realized that the pills' dates corresponded to the current month, and the correct pill for today had already been removed. Today was Tuesday, the 18th of the month, and 18 pills had been taken, including 2 from the following days. The prescriptions had been refilled recently, with an expiration date 2 years away. At the same time, I considered various scenarios. Did Grace truly desire to start a family? Could she be involved in a secret affair? Did she have undisclosed health issues? Why did she deceive me? Our bodies were not getting any younger, and the longer we postponed starting a family, the more challenging it would become. How should I approach her? I took the Tamiflu medication and went to bed. The next thing I knew, Grace was waking me up, asking about my well-being and if I needed anything. I was feeling better and didn't require anything. I couldn't help but feel that she hadn't confided in me, but she remained silent. I observed as she believed I had fallen asleep again, undressed, to take a shower. It appeared that some parts of her body were reddening. It suddenly struck me that she might have had an affair after her shift before coming home. Back when she worked in the other department, her shift change took less than 10 minutes. Why did it now take an hour? She left the bathroom door open, allowing me to watch her reflection in the full-length mirror. I thought she had spent an unusually long time grooming herself. Was this a regular occurrence? I had never observed her in this manner before. She undressed in our bedroom, leaving her clothes where she had discarded them. I picked up her underwear, and yes, it was still damp. I returned it under her robe and went back to bed. Until this point in my life, I had been wordlessly angry. I believed everything was perfect. Now, I was no longer so certain. Grace had acted like the ideal wife next to me. However, I realized there had to be a side to her that I had not comprehended. I needed more information. She returned to the bedroom after her shower and got into bed with me. I had never been in bed at this time of night. She didn't attempt to hug or console me, and I stayed on my side. She was long gone by the time I woke up the following morning. I contacted my boss and informed him that I was suffering from the flu. I had a substantial number of sick days accumulated and needed some time off to sort out my situation. I reached out to one of my close college friends who had become a lawyer and sought his advice. It didn't take long for me to discover that we were in a no-fault state, and since we didn't have children, our assets would be divided equally. The most significant asset was our house, which had gained some equity that would need to be sold and the proceeds split. My friend offered to represent me if I chose to pursue legal action, assuring me that it would be a straightforward case. At 8 o'clock that evening, I parked near Grace's car to keep an eye on her. We both had iPhones, and I used the Find My Phone app to check her location, which showed her still at the orthopedic ward. After about 10 minutes, I realized she was leaving, so I called the orthopedic department, hoping to speak with her. However, I was informed that her shift had ended, and she had already left. It dawned on me that she had deceived me about the shift change period, which was actually just 10 minutes or less. I continued monitoring the app on my phone and noticed that the blue dot had stopped in an unfamiliar area within the hospital complex. I decided to get out of the car and attempt to locate her. Finding her phone wasn't as straightforward as I had hoped. I initially ended up on the wrong floor. Eventually, after at least 20 minutes, I arrived outside one of the rooms used by doctors for resting during long shifts. Inside, I could hear the sounds of intimate activity. I needed to conceal myself to see who would emerge from the room, so I managed to find an open janitor's closet about 50 feet away. After roughly 20 minutes, Grace exited the room and made her way toward the garage. A few minutes later, a man came out as well. After a brief moment, he locked the door. I approached him and asked for directions, to which he kindly obliged. He was a few inches taller than me and had the appearance of a Greek god. I glanced at his name tag and recognized his name. Dr. William. I knew I needed a plan. I phoned my boss at home and explained that I indeed had the flu, but there was an urgent family matter that required my immediate attention. He empathized with my situation, having experienced a painful divorce himself a year ago. He told me to take all the time I needed, but requested that I keep him updated so he could make arrangements to cover my responsibilities. Afterward, I got in touch with my friend Max, who happened to be a lawyer, and informed him that I wanted Grace to be served, considering she had left our home after an intimate encounter on Thursday night. Max assured me he could arrange that and asked if there were any other ways he could assist me. Unsure of what other steps to take, I told him I wasn't certain, and he suggested handling the division of our finances and the cancellation of credit cards. He inquired about my plans after leaving her, and I admitted I hadn't thought that far ahead. Max instructed me to meet him at his office early the following morning. Having dealt with such situations before, he had a checklist of tasks for me to follow, even providing a list of budget-friendly hotels. My immediate priority was arranging for a transportation company to deliver a small shipment the next morning. I intended to place my belongings in storage until I found a more permanent living situation. Next on my list was a visit to the bank, where I withdrew half of the funds from our accounts and canceled our shared credit cards. I reinstated the accounts solely in my name and ordered new credit cards. Subsequently, I disconnected her cell phone at midnight after receiving the legal notice. That evening, I was in my computer room, saving important files for the upcoming weeks. When Grace returned home promptly at 9:30 p.m., we exchanged greetings, and she proceeded to take a shower before going to bed. I, too, retired to bed early, anticipating a busy day ahead. I didn't notice her growing detachment, nor did she realize when I went to bed. The following morning, she left the house early, and the movers arrived punctually at 9 a.m. I had a list of items to take with me and labeled everything that needed to be packed. My car was loaded with suitcases and computer equipment essential for work once the movers had completed their tasks. I went out and purchased a single black rose, as it's often associated with death, departure, and significant impending changes or disruptions in the future. In this context, the black rose symbolizes the end of our marriage and the demise of old habits and routines. I carefully positioned it at the center of our kitchen table and penned a brief note. Grace, you might recall that on Monday I called you, explaining that I wasn't feeling well and was heading home. Your advice was to take Tamiflu, and you directed me to where it could be found. However, it wasn't in your second dressing table. Instead, I located it in the top drawer along with your birth control pills. At that moment, various pieces of a complex puzzle fell into place. You weren't actively seeking to have a child because you were engaged in a romantic relationship with a doctor from your workplace. It appears that your affair with Dr. William took precedence over our marriage, and I gather it's been ongoing since your transfer to the orthopedic department. So many falsehoods. How could you? I believed we had a strong marriage built on trust and love. Now my heart is shattered. Did you think that I wouldn't discover the impending demise of our marriage? Well, here's the surprise. In our no-fault state, I don't require evidence of your infidelity, which, incidentally, would be quite easy to obtain. I've divided our accounts and taken everything I need from the house. Have you noticed that your cell phone and credit cards might not be functioning? Find a new place to reside because in 60 days, I'll be listing the house, and anything left behind will be donated to Goodwill. You're now free to make your choices. I wonder if he's married and has a family. Eventually, his wife will uncover the truth. What will the hospital have to say? Remember when I mentioned that I wouldn't tolerate infidelity? I'm just preparing you for what may unfold in the future. No longer your husband, John. Here's my wedding band. I no longer have a use for it. Consequently, I left it on the table along with the note before departing from the house. I checked into a hotel offering weekly rates and settled in, waiting for further developments. Grace was served divorce papers by a deputy sheriff who occasionally worked for Frank. He specialized in handling such legal matters. It seems she had a fit and lost consciousness. The doctor had to rush out in his underwear to provide assistance. About an hour later, she called, furious and inquiring about why I had filed for divorce. I responded by asking why she would pose such an obvious question. I informed her that I was aware of her infidelity dating back to her time in the orthopedics department, which spanned over 2 years. Curious, she inquired when I had discovered her affair, and I explained it was just last Monday while searching for Tamiflu. That's when I stumbled upon her birth control pills. I overheard her conversation on the phone. Afterward, it wasn't difficult to piece it all together, so I ended the call. Apparently, she hadn't read my letter. My sleep was restless, but I resolved to return to work the following day. There was an overwhelming workload awaiting me, and I had no particular destination or someone to return home to anymore. Consequently, I began putting in 16-hour workdays, 7 days a week. Max and I conversed frequently, and one day, I inquired about the doctor's marital status and whether there was a way to notify his wife of his involvement. Grace contested the divorce proceedings. Although I hadn't seen or heard from her, her attorney communicated with Max. The court date was drawing near, and I found myself in the same room with her, though she refused to make eye contact. I wore a suit with a black rose pinned to the lapel. The judge displayed an unfriendly disposition, generally disliking divorce cases. Grace proposed attending counseling, and Max questioned its relevance. Given her extramarital affair, I firmly informed the judge that I would not participate in any court-ordered counseling. I didn't care if he decided to throw me in jail. From my perspective, my wife was a dishonest, unfaithful woman, and I couldn't stand to be in the same room with her. I made it clear that, in my view, I hadn't done anything wrong, and it was Grace who had broken our wedding vows, leading to our divorce. I suggested sending her to counseling since she was the one in need of it. I was promptly found guilty of contempt of court and slapped with a fine. To be honest, I wasn't too bothered by it. I was seething with anger, and Max had to whisk me out of the courtroom before I said something that would land me behind bars. Max reminded me that it was just a hearing, not the final verdict. I asked Max to investigate whether Grace was avoiding the doctor. I wanted to expose their affair. Max hired a private investigator who set up a hidden camera in the doctor's break room and recorded their activities after hours. She was also caught bad-mouthing me on an audio recording. Let's just say their intimate encounters would rival an X-rated movie. I'd be curious to see how that plays out. I inquired whether we could hold the hospital accountable now that we had video evidence. Max didn't believe we could use the video in court, but leaking it anonymously would certainly tarnish the hospital's reputation and bring them unwanted attention. He advised me to wait until after the divorce was finalized and then send the video to the hospital, as well as to the administrators, the doctor's wife, our friends, and family. If she were fired before the divorce was finalized, I might end up paying alimony, which was something I absolutely wanted to avoid. Finally, the day of the divorce arrived, and the judge granted our divorce without further ado. He believed that too much animosity had already been stirred up, and he saw no hope for salvaging our marriage. The divorce was official. The very next day, the video leaked from an anonymous source completely unrelated to me. Things got chaotic pretty fast. Grace called me, questioning why I had done all of this. I informed her that there was no evidence proving I had leaked the video. However, I did express my gratitude to whoever had exposed the truth. I also reminded her that I had zero tolerance for infidelity, especially when it happened right under my nose and continued even after I filed for divorce. She had ended 2 marriages. I mentioned that things could be worse, and she agreed. Unfortunately, the situation did indeed worsen the following day when our family and friends reacted to the video. Everyone sided with me, and no one had kind words for her. People had always thought we had a perfect marriage. That was 3 years ago, and I haven't had any contact with Grace since. She seemed distant and severely affected. In the meantime, I got remarried to a wonderful woman, and we now have a 1-year-old daughter. My new wife desires a large family and intends to be a stay-at-home mom, which aligns with my long-standing wish. As for Grace and William, they faced significant hardships. Grace made multiple attempts to reach out to me for nearly a year. I'm not entirely sure why she tried, considering I didn't give her a chance to reconcile. Both William and Grace lost their jobs abruptly. William's wife initiated divorce proceedings. Grace might have been able to cope, but then I shared the video with our friends and family, dealing her a devastating blow. Consequently, she began contemplating starting anew. If she hadn't contested the divorce, she might not have lost her job. Grace didn't want a divorce, so she sought counseling. However, my strong reaction led to her losing the case in court. Her second mistake was continuing to see William and engage in a romantic relationship with him. I made a strategic decision by waiting until our divorce was officially completed before releasing the video. If I had done it earlier and she lost her job, I would have been obligated to pay alimony. Eventually, Grace felt thoroughly ashamed and embarrassed. She relocated to Oklahoma City and found employment as a nurse in a doctor's office. Perhaps she is working on rebuilding her life, and I hope she has learned from her experiences.